Hey guys, welcome to sportsgreview.com. I'm Natalie Rydstrom and we're here, the finals of the French Open 2018. We've got Whale Kappa with us and Nigel Seeley, who has been holding down the fort, doing a fantastic job here to preview both men's and women's singles. But first of all, Whale Kappa putting the cool into tennis betting, always sat in some remarkable place. How are you doing? How's the French Open been treating you?
This last week has been a dream. Really, I'm playing with house money at this point. I have some outstanding futures that I need Halep and Nadal to slam the door for me, and I will be putting this one on the record boards as a very successful fortnight. So I'm pretty happy.
Very awesome stuff there. Now, Nigel, before we were doing the futures, before the tournament started, Nadal was priced at 1.46, but we said that there was value in that. Did you take that as a futures bet? I know the other one you were saying not to drop a set. Obviously, that didn't come through, but did you put money on Nadal to win?
No, I did the Nadal to win, but not to drop a set. But my futures bets has been really poor, actually, to be honest with you. I backed a couple in the quarters. I backed a couple in the to win their quarters. Respective quarters haven't done well. I was on Svetlina quite heavy on the women's draw, so I've had a pretty bad tournament as far as the futures, but I've absolutely cleaned up on the matches.
Nice.
So I dropped over 50%, 50 points up, which is about a 16% ROI on the matches, but the outrights haven't been great for me. So I've had a brilliant match, but I haven't got anyone through to the final. I think Nadal was the obvious play, but it just shows you in tennis that Nadal was 140 at the start and he's going into the final and he's around about 130. So he hasn't really moved despite playing all those players. So, but that one's just losing that set yesterday. I know it cost Whale Kappa a few quid. That would have made it a really good tournament for me on the outright markets as well. But on the matches, it's been very successful.
Yeah. Now, Whale Kappa, I saw on Twitter as well, you weren't sure, so maybe we can help, maybe our viewers can help about whether to ride out Simona Halep or to hedge your bets. Nigel, what do you think you should do? I said to ride it out personally. I think she'll do it. What do you think?
Well, Whale Kappa's on the other end. Whale Kappa's sort of looking for Simona Halep, but he's also been sitting with some for good advice on Sloane Stephens. So whichever way it goes on, he's already nailed the two finalists. He's looking quite good shape already. I think this is a very interesting one. I think if it was a first round of a Grand Slam, a second round of a Grand Slam, or a third round of a Grand Slam, I would say that Simona Halep would win convincingly. And if it was outside any other event other than the Grand Slam, week in and week out, we see on the WTA tour, I would turn around and say Simona Halep was the best thing you could see at the price and offer. But there is this problem with Simona Halep eventually winning her first Grand Slam, and she's been into 3 finals. She's never done it. She's been underdog. She's been an overwhelming favourite in, especially the one last year as well, where she was expected to win. It never come through, and that is the problem, and that is why everyone's making a case for Sloane Stephens or thinking that Simona Halep could have her wobbles again. I think Sloane Stephens has had a tremendous tournament. I mean, absolutely tremendous tournament to reach this far. She's got a steely determination in her voice. Whenever she sees her, she impresses me more and more. She looks as though she doesn't show much personality off court. You know, she's very businesslike in her approach, and I think she'll relish the opportunity here. But I've said all along on this show, since my original tip went out, that I thought Simona Halep, this was the tournament that she had to win, and she's impressed me. And when the back's been against the wall, when she's been vulnerable, she was vulnerable against Muguruza yesterday, where she had break points. She was in trouble on her serve. She looked like she was going to go to 2-6-1, and she come through. She come back from a set down against Kerber, a world number one, former Grand Slam player. And if that was the Halep of a year ago, 18 months ago, I think she would have folded. And for me, I just think that now this is her time, and I think that Halep will perform tomorrow. I really do. I think we could be in for a decent match. I'm not necessarily sure it'll be a long match. We'll come on to some stats on that in a minute. But I think Halep wins, and I think Whale Kappa will be a happy man. But I think Stevens has done exceptional. But I just think even at the short prices, there is probably some value in her because people are just of this opinion that she can't get through a Grand Slam. Well, they said the same against Pete Sampras. They said the same against Roger Federer until he finally won Wimbledon. Roger Federer took a bit of a time to win Wimbledon. And then when he won it, I remember the famous commentator over here, Dan Maskell, famous tennis commentator, said, I've got a feeling this boy might win another one. And he went on and won another one. And I think once you get that breakthrough win, you can go on and win a few more. And I think Halep, it's her time, and I think she will win.
Yeah. Interesting. I'm just looking at the comments. One of them, Taif, is on. He's watching the show. He said a few noteworthy points. The head-to-head is misleading as the last two seemingly straightforward wins come from Stevens' return from a lengthy foot injury. Stevens has never lost a final in Korea thus far. We've got Barry Watts. Maybe Halep will fold in the final, though. And then we've also got Joseph says, I have a future on Stevens and nothing on Halep. Any suggestions on hedging? Well, Capra, I'll direct that question over to you now. Obviously, it seems to be sort of some people talking about Stevens. Obviously, you're hoping that doesn't. But as far as Joseph's question goes, do you have any advice on that?
If I had a Stevens future, I guess it kind of depends on if it was pre-tournament future and you're holding like 50 or 60 to 1 or whatever it was, then I would just unload on Halep money line and just take away the risk, lock in some units, and enjoy the final. If it's like in the 20 to 1 range, I don't know. You probably want to look for a live opportunity. Hope that Stevens looks like a live dog early. Get a chance to get a crack at something more along the lines of an even play. But I don't expect this to be a walkover at all. I don't. Mm-hmm. This is not. This is going to be a competitive match. Halep, as is well documented, she has had a very, very difficult time, not just in Slam finals, but in finals generally. And I was sweating yesterday against Muguruza when she had the match in hand. She won 6-1, and it was I think it was 4-3. She was down a break. She broke back, and it was like, okay, consolidate this, break back, basically, hold your serve, do your job. And that game lasted for an eternity, it felt like. Muguruza had so many looks at that break, and you kind of felt in that moment like, if Halep doesn't hold this serve somehow, this is the match. And sure enough, she was able to put together some spectacular shots and pulled out the victory. And, Muguruza was obviously mentally affected by not getting the break, and it was basically over after that. But that was a tenuous moment. It felt very in the balance at that time, and I wouldn't be surprised if there are moments like that in the Halep-Stevens match. Even if Halep can get out to a 1-0 set lead, there's going to be people out there waiting for an opportunity to fade her that they think that she'll mentally collapse, because we've seen it before. I would say, though, that I threw the question out there: should I hedge or should I let it ride? Mostly just because I wanted you guys to know these are my perspective, my opinion. This is my bias coming into this. Like I made up my mind on where I was going to be for this tournament in like January. Like when Halep lost to Waz in the Australian Open final, she came so close. Yeah. I was on Waz that day. I didn't hedge going into that final. It almost bit me in the ass. It was very, very close. But Halep, she's shown, time and again to, be making steps towards this final goal, this final moment. A lot of people have been saying it. This is her time. And I've kind of known all along I would be on Halep on Saturday to win this title. I'm not going to be able to bear it if she collapses. I'm going to have to turn off social media. I'm going to have to turn off the TV. It's going to be rough because it's going to be so sad. I will say, two other quick points on the women's final. I agree about the head-to-head being a little misleading, although I do think that there is something to be said for Halep's game specifically versus Sloane's game. Sloane likes to make her opponents run. She likes to put them in situations where they have to hit very difficult shots. And that is Halep's strength. And maybe no more so than this tournament. When she's been put on the run, when she's been asked to try to just keep the ball in play, she's hit some spectacular shots. It's almost like, when it's that hard, like the mental part of it kind of goes away and she's just using pure instinct. And I've seen her a number of times be in tough situations and, within, a point and come up with just the perfect shot for it. I think we'll see that a lot this Saturday. I think Sloane's going to make her move around a lot, and we'll see the best of Halep. But yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun, and I would say, if you're holding the Stevens ticket, look for an opportunity to bet Halep live if Sloane gets up early, this is her time. Let's go, Simona.
Yeah.
Can I just make a quick point, just very quickly, Natalie, just very quickly as well on this game before we move on to the men's, read some comments or something like that. Just one thing about hedging. I think it's a very, very different thing with hedging. I think it's a psychological thing with hedging, is where people will always hedge if they're carrying the anti-post voucher on the favourite. So, for example, if you've got Sloane Stephens and you're at 50 and she's won 45 for this match, there's a psychological part of you thinks, well, I don't mind throwing a couple of $100 or losing $100 at 145. It's very hard for people to hedge when their favourite, even though it's a lot shorter when they took the price, is still a big underdog for the final. That's one thing that I've noticed for years and years and years with punters' mentalities. But it's still exactly the same. If money's money, you can trade it out however you want to do. The second thing on the head-to-head, just on clay courts, she's never ever won a set off Halep on clay. Mm-hmm. And the last time they played in the French Open was in 2014. Halep was 1.20 to win that game. She's also played Australian Open where she was 1.30. In Washington, she played in 2017. She was 1.15. So Halep hasn't started at the price she has against Stephens since 2013. So it's an overreaction on this fact that I think that she's considered someone who's temperamental. And so for that reason, I think it's some value. And just on the total game line, I know Tyfe mentioned, I think it was before on Twitter, over 21.5 or 20.5, he thought was free money. In all their games, there hasn't been one match that's produced more than 20 games.
Yeah.
So in all those head-to-heads they've played, it's something like 7 head-to-heads, is it, World Cup? Not one game has gone into a third set. Every game has been straight sets win. And every match hasn't produced more than 20 games, which is quite astonishing, really, when you think of it. And that is because they're both good front runners. And I think whoever gets in front of this game will win in straight sets.
All right.
Can I ask you a question? Get you guys a question?
Absolutely.
As far as Halep goes in her past Slam finals, are there any that you've seen where you thought Halep was the better player that day? I know she was favored last year against Ostapenko, but Ostapenko was just white freaking hot heading into that match. And I think I had Ostapenko money line that day. I definitely had the handicap. There were parts in the match where it looked like Halep was going to win. But I don't think she was the better player that day. And I really, looking back at the other Slam finals where she hasn't been able to get it done, I don't think she was the better player. And I think in this case, we are talking about her being the better player, particularly it being on clay. I'm sure Sloane Stephens will have a brilliant future, and we'll probably talk about her as a Slam, as a French Open champion sometime down the line here. But I do think Halep is the better player, and I do think that matters.
Yeah. Somebody was saying, Barry Watts was saying that on the last show, I believe Nigel was hosting, Alex was on, that you guys were recommending Sloane Stephens. Is that right? Somebody
no. Well, Kappa said that Sloane Stephens was a good bet at 20s at the time, but you have your opinion change. If you can fancy someone at 20s and then get to the final and hedge your position. I mean, I've said at the start, Kappa's got both of them in the final. He took an anti-post bet in January, and he said the value at the time when we spoke was 20-1 Sloane Stephens, so he was in a really good position. I mean, I probably said, but you look at at the time, I said Sloane Stephens would win her match. Against Madison Keys, I fancied that. I've never once been in the Sloane Stephens camp. I've been anti-Sloane Stephens in the game against Georgie, massively anti myself, and Alex were anti. She was lucky to get through that. And I was against her again against Kasatkina as well. So I haven't been in the Sloane Stephens camp at all because I still don't think, despite her results here, she's an actual clay court player. I think she will go on and do well again in the US Open. I think she'll do well in the Australian Open. But I think this is Halep's time. And on individual games, I've tipped Sloane Stephens up in 1, I think, against Madison Keys, but I've been pretty anti her in the matches that we've spoken about.
Yeah.
When we talked, I'm sorry to interrupt you. When we talked on last Saturday, I think we laid it all out. Like Sloane's going to come out of the bottom, she's going to make the final, and Halep's going to take her down. That was kind of the position all along that we were kind of looking for, and we kind of constructed our bets that way. So it's I think this, this is it for Halep. This is her time.
Yeah. Well, let's move over now to men's, and before I'll ask for your bets. Keep us in suspension until the end. I do have one though. Taif Stevens plus 4.5 at 1.75 is my best my best play in my opinion. And then somebody said as well, Halep all day long. I missed it. I think it's not to drop a set. Halep wins in straight sets. Make book on it. Take it to the windows. But anyway, we'll see if you guys agree or disagree as we get to the end. But next one, obviously, Nadal, Dominic Thiem. Nadal 1.25. Dominic Thiem 4.5. Obviously, number 7 seed there. Any chance that Nadal is going to lose this? Is there anything that makes you think that he will lose this? Is this going to be a quick game? Going to start with you, Whale Kappa. Obviously, the absolute favourite from the beginning and has remained so thus far. So, what are we looking at here?
I guess let's talk about how to handicap this one. It's a fascinating match. It's the best we could have hoped for. Nadal is the only man to have Thiem is the only man to have beaten Nadal the last 2 years on clay. That's, this is a fantastic match to handicap. The first thing I looked at wasn't the head-to-head, wasn't even the odds. I looked at the weather. And the reason is when it is warm and dry, you get more bounce off of the Philippe Chatrier surface, and Nadal absolutely eats it alive. And in particular, that the opposite is true for what makes us, what lends itself to Thiem strengths. And when it's cooler, when it's wetter, Thiem really, because he generates all of his own power, he's looking to play a baseline to baseline game. That really plays into his strength. And so I kind of thought to myself, okay, this is, Thiem is a live dog if we have the type of conditions that we saw between Nadal and Schwartzman on day one of that match. And looking at the weather, it looks to be a little cooler. Mm-hmm. It looks to be potentially some rain in the area. I'm going to keep my eye very closely on that before finalizing any of my plays because, again, the weather has been unpredictable over this fortnight. There's been some days we expected rainouts and it was just beautiful, and then vice versa. So, you keep an eye on that. And really, if it's a cool, wet day, if it's overcast, and Thiem is generating, is able to get into his game, then I think he's a live dog. Do I think that he wins? No, I don't at all. And I don't necessarily understood the price that they hung. If you had asked me if I was making the book and I was, what's the reasonable line here, I would have been more in the, I'm not sure about what this translates to EU prices, but I would have been more in the minus 600 to minus 800 range for Nadal. Yeah. Just because, this is, he's only ever dropped, one set in the final at Roland Garros before. And, he's kind of shaken a little bit of whatever was going on with him, a couple days ago. So, I think there is a chance that we've seen Thiem put together a competitive effort here. I would give him especially a shot early in the match when, Nadal, seems to warm into his play a little bit and try to, get his opponent to reveal their cards a little bit about what their tactics are that day. And so first set, Thiem is absolutely a good look at a potential upset in the first set. He may get a break in the second set, and at that point, I would say chips in the table, all in on Nadal. Nadal wins 3-1.
Okay. Is this something you're going to be in play betting then? Will you be posting any tips like on your Twitter handle?
I will try. It's going to be early. I might
in between biting your fingernails.
Well, I think if I had to say right now, just based on the way that they're calling the weather, I'm expecting Nadal 3-1. That was actually my feeling before we even got into the tournament, was Nadal 3-1 in the final over Thiem. So this has kind of gone as expected. I'm not really ready to shake. I don't think Thiem shows up and gets run. Thiem's played him twice before in Roland Garros, and he's gotten beaten 3-0 both times. I think that we're looking at a more competitive player on Sunday than what we've seen in the past. But I don't expect him to be able to win 3 sets on Nadal.
All right. Over to you, Nigel. It seems that Whale Kappa is going to wait for the weather and is not 100% sure yet on what to pull the trigger on. Do you have anything? Is this a straight sets victory? What are we looking?
Well, I'm pretty much in agreement with Whale Kappa. I mean, the interesting thing I thought of this game is that usually when you look at head-to-heads, there's not really many occasions where a lot of players play on clay. You know, if you look at certain players, they may have played 22 times. There'll be 3 games on clay. These guys have astonishingly played 9 times in their career, and every single game has been on clay, which is quite amazing, really, when you consider like they've never met on any other surface. I think that's a huge stat. So it just shows you really how dominant these two have been on clay over the last 2 years, 3 years in particular, since the team has been a semi-finalist for the last 2 years. I think there's one thing beating Nadal in Madrid, and I think there's one thing beating Nadal in Rome, wasn't it, when his other win was? But it's a very different thing beating him in his own backyard in Roland Garros. And for that reason, I think he's got the game plan and the know-how and the brute strength and the force to force the game on his favour. I do think Thiem will capitalise. I don't think it'll be straightforward. I do think, I mean, Nadal was very, very vulnerable. And he's looked slow in the opening sets in all the games I've seen him play. He wasn't really great today in the first set. I mean, Del Potro had some break points and never couldn't take them. But once he gets into his form in the second and third set, he just grinds you down. And, you know, he's like good football teams who just have the ball and possession against the minnow. Eventually, like Barcelona, you could be 0-0 with them for 35 minutes, but your back's against the wall for so long that they will put 2 or 3 past you in 2 minutes. And that is what Nadal does. He's a bully. And he does beat teams, beat players very, very easily. I've got one bet here, which is my strong bet, and one bet which is a bit left field. I do think Thiem will trouble him, and I like over 3.5 sets in the game at 1.91. Okay. So I think that's a good bet. I think there'll be sets in it, and just as a real left field one, just something to just have a little bit of interest in. I might back Dominic Thiem to win the first set. Just at a very, very big price, because I think it doesn't matter to me. If he wins the first set, everyone will go, oh, it's game on. But I think that makes Nadal play better when his back's against the wall. Mm-hmm. And I think if Thiem doesn't win that first set, then Nadal wins 3-0, no problem. But I think he will have chances in the first one. But, you know, I might go, I'm thinking about backing Thiem to win the first set. But my main bet would be over 3.5 sets here at 1.91. All right. And I'll just tell you what price Dominic Thiem to win the first set is 3.25.
Okay. All right. And over to the women's now. How are you playing women's finals? What's your best bet there?
I'm going Halep to win 2-0. I think whoever wins the first set wins the game 2-0. I don't think once whoever got their head down, I think will struggle to come back. I was going to go over the games, but that stat that whoever's won the first set's won 2 in straight sets, and not having one game ever gone over 20 has put me off. And the other thing that's put me off is Tife's on it, so I don't want to be carrying my money behind him. So I'm going to go for a straight sets 2-0 Simona Halep.
All right. And over to you, Whale Kappa, women's finals.
No drama here. We're on the same page. I love the look. I would say Halep 2-0 to start the match, and while I mean the over in this one to me is more highly correlated with Stevens winning the first set. If Stevens wins the first set, I don't think we see Simona pack it in. I think she can come back and fight and scrap out a second set, and then we see it go the distance. So you know, if you're inclined to back Simona 2-0, that's a decent look. And then, you know, I'll be probably playing that one in running as well, where you know, if at any point it looks like there's value on Halep, I'm going to grab some more.
There we go. I just want to thank both Whale Kappa and Nigel, also Alex as well, for being with us for the whole tournament. Do follow them both. Whale_Kappa, Twitter handle there. Maybe he's got some in-play bets if he's got time from chewing his fingernails. And Nigel Seeley, Seeley_Nigel as well. It's been an absolute pleasure. And Nigel, thanks for filling in my shoes and hosting. You did a fantastic job. Best of luck, and we'll see you for the next Grand Slam. Take care.
Take care. All the best.